Well, by now, most of you probably know the rather depressing statistics about the nuns. I'm not talking about women religious, but the Nones, right? Those who claim no religious affiliation. The fastest growing religious group in America are the nuns. The latest survey showed that fully 25% of our country are now in the category of the nuns. That's 80 million people in our country would claim no religion. And among the young, so those like 30 and younger, it goes up to 40% would claim no religion. The other thing that's striking is this increase has been precipitous. When I was a kid, it would be a teeny tiny percentage of Americans would have claimed no religious affiliation. Even 10 years ago, you know what it was? It was about 14%. So there's been a precipitous increase in those who are just moving outside of religion. Now, I've already said a lot of things about this. I will say more about it. I think it's, in my judgment, problem number one that the Catholic Church should be facing. But what I want to do for today is share some reflections based on the Feast of Mary, the Mother of God. As I was preparing that homily, three words jumped out at me, and all of them, I think, have great relevance to our time and to this problem of the nuns. Here are the three words. They are haste, astonished, and treasured. Okay, so those three: haste, astonished, and treasured. First of all, we hear that when the shepherds had received the message from the angels, they went in haste, right, to share the news. That echoes, of course, something a little bit earlier in Luke's gospel when Mary, having heard the angel at the Annunciation, went in haste into the hill country to visit her cousin Elizabeth. Same word in Greek. Haste, quick, knew what they were doing, knew where they were going. They were on mission, right? Where's that come from? It comes from, I would argue, a clear and objective sense of value. You know, go back to a philosophical hero of mine, Dietrich von Hildebrand, who distinguished famously between the merely subjectively satisfying and the objectively valuable, right? The subjectively satisfying is something that, you know, I like, it satisfies my taste. So I like spaghetti, you like pork chops. I mean, it's merely subjectively satisfying. But the objectively valuable is in a qualitatively different category, right? That means something whose goodness invades us, whose goodness and value seize us and change us. We don't bring them into our world. We're brought into their world, right? So think now of a sublimely great work of art, a sublimely great person, et cetera, et cetera. Now, what's the limit case of an objective value, but an objective transcendent value, right? The value of God, God the supreme good. So here's the point. When God, when the transcendent and objective good breaks into your life, that's what gives you mission and purpose. That's when you go in haste. The trouble with the nuns' world, it's the whatever culture, right? Whatever. Your truth, my truth. Yeah, it's up to you. I'll tolerate you, tolerate me. There's no objective value that has seized both of us and sent us on mission. It's just my little world, your little world. John Henry Newman talked about the river, right, that moves with a certain alacrity and energy. What makes that possible, Newman said, is the firmness of its banks. If the banks are firm and clear, the water is going to move. Now, suppose in the name of freedom, let's knock down the banks, right? Let the river go where it wants. What's going to happen? The river, Newman said, will lose all of its verve and energy. It'll spread out into this big, lazy lake. Well, see, I would argue that's the situation of a lot of people today who have drifted into nunhood, right? No objective value, no supreme transcendent good that is seizing me and sending me. Instead, I'm kind of resting on an air mattress on the big lazy lake of my own subjective desires. They win in haste. They win in haste. What will give us a sense of emergency and purpose is a sense of the transcendent, right? Now, here's the second word, is astonished. So we hear that all who took in the shepherd's message were astonished at what they heard. The King James has something like they wondered at it, you know. Now, let me make a distinction. Sciences. As I've said a million times, Catholic Church loves the sciences. Gregor Mendel, founder of modern genetics, Catholic priest. Georges Lemaitre, founder of the Big Bang Theory, Catholic priest. Okay, so we got nothing against science. Nothing. I'm totally pro-science. However, science as such does not produce astonishment. What do I mean? Well, when you're a scientist and you're following the scientific method, that means you're observing, you're forming a hypothesis, you're conducting an experiment, you're drawing conclusions. Good, great, all in favor of it, nothing against it. But you're in charge. You're in charge of the operation. You'll uncover wonderful things, true things, good things. But I would argue they won't astonish you. What astonishes you is something that comes from outside your experience, that's not under your control, that you haven't predicted in advance, that you're not looking for. Something that has, the French say, bouleversé, it's turned you upside down, right? Think now of Mother Teresa on the way to Darjeeling as a young nun going on retreat, and she hears a voice. And she describes it as hearing a voice of Jesus calling her to now give her life to the poorest of the poor. That was astonishing, right? She wasn't expecting it, wasn't in control of it, but it came bursting in from the outside. Or think of this, one of my favorites, Dorothy Day, when she was considering becoming a Catholic, she was kind of getting interested in religion. She had her first child. And she said, sitting on the porch of her home with her baby, she felt a gratitude that was so great that she knew nothing in the world could contain it. It would correspond to nothing in the world. Like she couldn't go to someone and say, thank you, and that was an adequate conveying of the gratitude she felt. That was an astonishing moment. Because what she felt was, this was a gift from God. She was thankful to God. A power not in this world. I think there's a great impoverishment of spirit when more and more people are drifting into nunhood. Yeah, they'll be safe and comfortable, and they'll be able to kind of control their little world, but they won't be astonished, and they won't have energy, and they won't know where they're going. See, that's the problem. Here's the last one now. So we got haste, got astonished, finally treasured. So we hear that Mary, having taken all this in, treasured these things in her heart. Newman again said that Mary thereby becomes the model of all theology. Right? What's theology but a conscious treasuring of the data of revelation? So we don't just take in what God has done, but now we treasure it. What's the church up and down the ages? I'm thinking now of, the Gothic cathedrals, Dante's Divine Comedy, the Summa of Thomas Aquinas, the essays of Chesterton and Newman, the liturgy itself, the sacraments, the lives of the saints. What is all that but a conscious and steady act of treasuring the transcendent mystery, treasuring the astonishing moments when God breaks into our lives? We are an impoverished world if we lose the capacity to treasure the transcendently valuable. Those who drift into nunhood, why bother? What's there to treasure? It's just the little world that I know and can control. To me, there's something terribly lost in that. So, what I would say, anyone listening to me right now who has drifted into that sort of attitude of spiritual indifference, let's say, remember the power of going in haste. How wonderful it feels to really be on a mission. Remember those wonderful and rare moments when you're truly astonished. Something has broken into your life that you can't control. And then don't forget to treasure. If we stop treasuring, we're going to fall into spiritual amnesia. So, 3 words for the nuns.